Good evening everyone, this is Zola and today we're going to be having an intermediate look at After Effects. Now, for those of you who haven't watched the first one, you can find it on my site, the tutorial section, currently on page 4, I think. Page 4 of the tutorials, and there's the beginner's guide to After Effects there, or you can find it on my Vimeo. And what we're going to be doing is just building on what we learned in this particular lesson. I have no idea why I did that, but yeah, so I recommend you watch this first, and once again we're not going to be getting too advanced. I'm just going to assume that you've watched the first one and you have no knowledge of anything else, and so we're just going to try and build on what we learned in that first lesson. So here we are in After Effects, and today I'm just going to be covering more and more of, in fact I'm going to try and cover all of the layout if that's possible. So yeah, hopefully won't be too long, but should be quite fun and informative, more importantly. As you can remember, I taught you how to import footage, to size your composition, showed you about the timeline, how to add keyframes, and how to render. So yeah, let's move on from that. So I have a piece of footage here donated to me by myself, so I'd like to thank myself for that. No problem. Cool. Alright, and I'm just going to be using this piece of footage in particular as a placeholder, and just in case we do have to explain any kind of features that will involve a video, then I will do that for you. So first thing we're going to do is start up here and have a look at the toolbar. This is the main selection toolbar, I guess. This is where all the main tools that you'll be using reside. By default you have the select tool, which is here, and it's V for select. I'm not sure how that works. You have the hand tool, which you can just get by holding down a spacebar, and this will interactively let you move your composition around, which is useful if you've got a big composition. So I would never use that tool. Zoom, once again, if you press Command plus, you can do that, and I'll be showing you some other ways to do it. But you can zoom on areas if that's the kind of thing you want to do. And I suspect that's Z. Yep, got it in one. But yeah, I've never used that tool in my life. So moving on. C, this is the rotation tool, W. As you can see, at the moment my layer is 2D, meaning I can only spin this in 2D. And once again, I would not do that. I would press R to bring up the rotation parameter and do it that way. So, and you can get that, obviously we explained this last time, by twirling down the source and then going down to rotation, which is here. Moving on, we have the pan behind, also known as the anchor point tool. Press Y, you can bring that up, and this lets you move basically the center axis of this layer. Now, this might not seem like a big deal, but watch when I rotate it now. So you can see it's rotated around the axis point. So that's really useful for maybe if you've drawn a hand or an arm or something, and you want to place the axis so that when you do rotate it, it rotates around the joint. If I wanted to rotate this around the top of the ball, so it could swing, if you imagine it had no background. And then you could get it swinging from left to right. So that's what that does. And like I said, that's the pan behind tool, and that is up here, but that's Y if you want the shortcut. A useful one to know. Next one is the rectangle, but we also have the star, the polygon, the rounded rectangle, and by pressing up you can change the number of sides you have on these, and these are just to mask, as it were. And you can actually create shapes with these as well if you don't have a layer selected. So if I unselect this and draw out, we've now got a vector shape, and if you've watched the introduction to Illustrator as well, you'll know what that is. And up here we have the fill and the stroke, which is currently at 0. Let's move that up, and yeah, you get the idea. Now, shape layers in themselves are complex things, because you have the stroke and the fill. Once again, if you're familiar with Illustrator, That's basically what this is doing. It's bringing the functionality of Illustrator into here, and you've got your rounding here and all this kind of stuff, and you can duplicate strokes by Command D. So now we've got 2 strokes, and can expand the width of this one and make it blue maybe. So now we've got 2 strokes, and so you can obviously see the potential for making cool shapes and animations with that. But once again, that's not what this lesson's about, so we'll move on. And if you want to know that, usually by default this is rectangle. Sorry, I've done that again. Make sure your layer selected, and then when you do drag out, you will be masking, which once again is something I'll explain later on. The pen tool is G, which is the next one on here, and this once again lets you draw lines. Once again, I had nothing selected, so it's gone ahead and made one of these shape layers again. But if I have my ball selected, this is how you would go about masking out parts of your composition. And there you go, I'm using the space bar there to move around my composition, dragging this out, and if you hold space bar while you're drawing a point, you can move it around, which is really useful for placing it. So I'm going to do this quick and dirty. So there we have it, and so we've masked out that ball. So if you ever want to separate something from its background, that was the way you would do it. I'm going to leave that as is for now, for a good reason. As you can see now, we have a mask beneath our thing, and just like when we added a transform, an effect, by dragging the effect onto the layer, the effects tab appears. I'll delete that. In much the same way, when you draw a mask on a layer, you'll get a mask tab, and then you get the option to feather the mask, which lets you feather the basically the transparency around the edges of the mask opacity. So if you want anything within this mask would be this opacity, and then the expansion is how far from this the line, or the mask line, the mask actually starts, so you can bring this into negatives or the positives. So that's useful in certain occasions. Maybe you've drawn a mask too tight and you just want to expand it a bit and feather it down at the same time. But once again, I'm going to undo that and go back to my default. So moving on. Making good ground here. Now we have the text tool, which is Command T, and this, as I've shown you before, lets you write text. And once again, that's something I explained in the first lesson, so I'm not going to go too much into that. And that's a vast subject in itself as well. So next we have the kind of drawing tools, which are Command B, I believe. Yep, Command B, clone stamp. I really don't use these because if I want to do cloning or brushing or things like that, I usually do it in Photoshop and then track it in, because Photoshop is just the master for those kinds of things. So I wouldn't say discount these altogether, but certainly if you're at the intermediate stage, I wouldn't recommend looking too much at these right now. And last but not least, you have the Commands P, I believe. Yeah, the puppet pin tool, which lets you make your mesh. And once again, if you've watched my tutorial on I think it's faking super slow motion, then you'll see I've explained this in some detail already. So we're going to remove that, and once again you'll see how this has added an effect and the puppet effect. So I'm going to delete that and the points are gone. So that's what's going on up here. Moving across here, we have our info that shows you whereabouts in the screen you are, and the color information of the section you are on, if ever you needed to reference that. The audio is just the levels. Obviously I have no audio here, but it shows you the levels that your scene is playing at, and if you're hitting the red up here, you might want to think about clamping the upper levels of your audio. The time controls here I can't remember if I went into these last time, but you have the option for 2 RAM preview. I've told you that pressing circle will play your scene, but once again, for a scene like this it's fine, but for a complex scene when you have audio as well, you want to press 0 on your number pad to play it, so that you get the sound, and it will also play at the correct frame rate, so you know exactly what it's going to look like when you render it. And we have 2 options here. I usually have we have RAM preview and shift RAM preview. So for RAM preview, I usually just have this playing from my whole area, so you would untick from current time, and then for shift RAM preview I would have this playing, and you can get it to skip a frame if you want. Once again, auto would set it to whatever your composition frame rate is, but say I just wanted to play from a certain area in my timeline, I would press shift circle, and so now it would just play from that area. So it's useful to have those 2 set up in that way, so you can either preview your whole area by pressing 0, or just a certain area by pressing shift 0, which is useful. You can also full screen when you see, if I wanted to put my shift RAM preview to full screen, you can do that as well. Character is obviously my font. Brush tips, I don't really need my brush tips, so I'm going to hide that for now. And all these are movable around, so if I grab this top right corner, once again, if you've watched my other tutorials, I've gone through this on another one, and you can dock these basically together to save on room and expand your horizons, as it were. And if you go up into window, you'll see these are all the panels you can bring up for the right side. And so if you look here, we've got lots and lots here which aren't even on here. Motion sketch, which once again I've shown you how it works. Paint, the wiggler, all these kinds of things. And there's workspaces set up for these, which you can access here. So if you're going to be doing motion tracking, you would select motion tracking, and let's just do that, and it will set your whole composition area up to motion track. So now we've got our tracker controls here, which weren't on my old one, and then I can go back to full res editing if I want. And if you ever get to the point where you've made a nice layout, you save it. So you go to workspace, new workspace, and then you would name it and save it, and so then it would be accessible from here. You can do it there as well. And if you ever got to the point where you've maybe deleted some of the menus and you want to bring them back, you can just go to reset, and that will reset your work area, which is also useful to know. So moving down, let's have a look at what's under here now. First one, ignore, not that important. Fit, this is how far zoomed into your composition you are. 1.5, you'd have a spec, 25%, etc, etc. You can also get it to fit up to 100%, so depending on how big this is, your screen will automatically scale up or down, as it were, and you would get the accurate measurement there. I'm going to leave this at 100 because we have enough screen space. Thank you very much. And here we have the show guides. Now this is useful for I'm not sure if I've shown you how to use rulers. That's Command R, and rulers are really useful if you drag out from the side. Once again, if you've used Photoshop, you've no doubt used these before, and if you want, it's very, very useful for lining things up when you need to do that. And as you can see here, they're interactive, so once you've brought them out, you can still move them around. If that is getting annoying, go to View and Lock Guides, and then now you'll see I don't have the option to move those, and I can go to Clear Guides to get rid of those. If you press R and hide them, they will stay there. So yeah, the only way to get rid of them is go to Clear Guides. But yeah, so those are the guides, so we've got those ticks, so that's nice. Proportional grid and grids are just grids basically. I don't use those that much. Title safe you can get by bringing, this is really useful if you're working for TV. You can get this by doing this as well. So click that on, and this will show you basically the safe area within which basically when you if you want some short background on this, if you are producing your composition for TV, some people who still have the 4x3 TVs, you need to keep your composition within that area so that the sides didn't get clipped. Many of us are lucky enough to have widescreen TVs now, so you would get that information, but you have to bear in mind that some people, when you're producing adverts for TV, a lot of the country, in fact most of the country, will still use the old 4x3 TVs. So that's why you'd bring this grid up to make sure all your text and all your important information is within this area. So that's that. So I'm going to hide that for now. This will just show or hide your masks. So as you can see, we've got our mask here. I'm going to come down to here. You can change the color of it, which is useful. I'm going to make this dark green, and by clicking here you'll see you can hide your masks, which can be useful or not depending on what you want to do. Current time, once again, you can kind of access that from here, so I wouldn't really bother with that. Taking snapshots is useful. Let's say for example you want to compare two areas of your scene, or maybe you've even got two compositions, so you got this infinite ball composition and you wanted to just compare two separate points in time. You would take a screenshot just by clicking there, and then if I move here, and then I can temporarily show it as well, and so that will show your last screenshot. And you can actually store like 4 or 5 of these. I believe it's Shift or Command F5, but actually I have my Command and such buttons set up for iTunes because I listen to music far too much. So it drives my work colleagues insane when they use my computer, but that's the way I like to do it. So yeah, suck it. Show channel is useful if you press Alt 1, 2 and 3. As you can see, the area has been highlighted in blue, green and red, and this will just show the watch this down here, red channel, green channel, blue channel of your image, and you can bring it back. You can also get the alpha by pressing Alt 4. I'm going to bring this back to RGB, and that's useful for if you're, for example, looking to extract a channel. Basically, if you're looking, well, it's kind of advanced, so I guess you could ignore that for now, but if you're looking to pull a mat and you're trying to flick through the channels to see which one had the best contrast, so in this case it would be probably the blue one actually. By most contrast I mean the difference in color information between the areas, and you would then work with that channel with a channel extract filter to kind of use that as a basis to extracting maybe a sky or something or other. Once again, advanced, so don't worry too much about that. This is the resolution button. Now in newer versions of After Effects, this will automatically, you can select auto, and auto will, based on how far you zoomed out, so if you zoomed out at 50 it will automatically half your resolution. You see this still looks sharp because I'm at 50%, but if I zoom into 100% we now can see that it's at half resolution. At third and at a quarter you get, can you see a quarter, you would notice that, but if you come out to 25% you would not notice that. And the new versions of After Effects actually have an auto here, and that will automatically do that for you. I'm in CS3 at the moment here at home, so yeah, that's what that does. I suggest using auto for that. Region of interest is useful if you have a really heavy composition and you just want to keep your eye on one area, and so when you're rendering, if I render this now, that will render really fast because that's the only area we're looking at, and you can just undo that by unpressing it. So that's once again useful if you're looking at an area of like lots of effects and your composition's running slow. You might just want to look at that area. And it's the same with these. If your composition is going really slow, but say you're just wanting to add sound to this, and your image at that point is not really that interesting, or important to what you're doing, just bring this down to a really low resolution, because at the end of the day you can always bring it back up to full when you want to actually preview it. So that is why you would actually bring this down to full or quarter, especially when you have if you don't have the fastest computer. That can come in quite handy. I worked a long time off my laptop, and that was one of the features I used the most. Last but not least, we have the toggle transparency. This will just show your transparent areas, and at the moment our transparent area is behind this ball because we've masked out the ball with our pen tool, and so basically anything behind this is now transparent because we only have one layer. By default, if you have everything hidden, you have a completely transparent composition, and if you press this it will show it up as black, but this is actually still transparent. So just toggle that to whatever makes you feel more comfortable, but just know that this area is still transparent no matter which one of these you have on. It's often useful to keep it on the checkerboard just so that you know that you don't have maybe a black layer, a layer of black solid color there or something or other. The camera, once again, I've been through this in my other tutorials, so I'm not going to go through that. The toggle aspect ratio, I'm working at square pixels now. Once again, this is more gauged towards if you have footage which is anamorphic. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but I'm going to interpret this. Once again, don't take what I'm doing here too seriously, but you can toggle, yeah, basically this is not going to work because it's not proper anamorphic footage. But if you have anamorphic footage which would be stretched inwards because of a different pixel aspect ratio, I know this is going to sound really confusing, but you can toggle, and this will like expand your footage to what it looks like now. So if you ever bring in footage and it looks really squashed like inwards, it's because the pixels are basically squashed because of the aspect ratio. So you can click this and it will temporarily like show the image at what you're looking at now, which is how the proportions are supposed to be. Because when you once again, this is something to do with TV, when you actually record and work for TV, the footage itself when you finish is squashed inwards, and then it's actually your TV which will then squash it outwards. Once again, very confusing, but I'm not going to go through that in detail. Last things, fast previews, I'm not going to go through that. Timeline we have down here anyway. Comp flow chart, not really that useful in my opinion. Last but not least, you have the exposure, which will help you, say you're doing some compositing and you've got an area and you're not sure if it's going to stand out, or you've masked an area, or you want to find the edge of an area, maybe it's like on a really dark piece of footage. You can temporarily brighten up your footage down here, and you can reset it by clicking here, just so that you can see the edges better. This is not a great example in fact, but or you can bring it the other way down to have a look. But yeah, that does have its uses. So I'm going to delete the mask now and bring this footage back central. And we're going to move down to the last portion of our video. I mean, we're pushing 20 minutes already. I just wanted to give you a really in-depth look at all these tools so that next time you open After Effects you will know what all of these do. And if you are wondering why your mask is not showing, for example, why your mask is pulling these strange colors and such, you will hopefully know why. And that's the whole point behind this intermediate lesson, so bear with me. Actually, let's have a look down here. This is the find project item. Useful if you want to, basically if you have massive composition, lots of elements, and you just want to pull up the spark footage that you have in there. You can do that there. Folder, mix folders, and you can then store it. This is useful for keeping your projects organized. This new composition, I've shown you that already in the beginners, I believe. Bits per channel. If you alt click this, as you can see, my my image is changing, and you might be wondering why that is. By default, like I said, you have to alt click to cycle through this. By default, you will be at 8 bits per channel. This is basically limiting your color information to I don't have the numbers on hand, but basically the higher you go, the more colors After Effects is giving you to play with. And at 32 you have the maximum. You have an insanely high amount of color information. As you can see here, the RGB now is going into 4 decimal places. If we come here, we've only got, if you look here, keep your eye here, there we've only got hardly any, you know. So yeah, this is useful for certain things, but you really need to know what you're doing. Lots of effects don't work at 16 and 32 bits per channel. You might get a warning when you apply an effect. You'll have like a little exclamation mark icon, and it'll say like this effect is not made for 16 bits per channel. So only use it if you have to, basically. What it will do is, as you can see here, we have banding. Banding here, and this there's not much I can do here because this footage has been rendered and encoded with a certain amount of color information. But if you were creating effects inside After Effects, like Fractal Noise, for example, in fact, let's see if I can do that right now. I'm going to bring up the noise, Fractal Noise. I'm kind of freewheeling this, so hopefully I'll get some good results. Toner. And no, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a ramp effect. So we're going to bring the ramp. Ramp is a gradient to you and I. And I'm going to stretch this color information out over a long, like not that much color information. So we're going from a black to a darker red, and you can see you've got all these horizontal lines now, and that is because After Effects does not have enough color information to basically fill this gap so that it's smooth. There's just not enough colors between here and here for you to have a smooth transition. Now if I change this to 16 bits per channel, you'll see that After Effects is now doing a slightly better job of interpreting this ramp. If I bring it to 32, it's exactly even better. Actually, this is not working, so I'm not quite sure why that is, but that would be a good way to illustrate this. It might just be because hang on, let's have a look. There we go. Sorry, I'm just being a bit ditzy. It's been a long day. So I'll bring this up to 32, and you'll see now the ramp is a lot smoother than if we bring it back to 8, where we're getting lots of stepping. So that would be the time to. You can actually add a bit of noise to this ramp, this with the scatter, and that would kind of smooth out the effect. As you can see now, that that problem is gone by adding. Basically, we've just added lots of little noise particles to break up the ramp. That's another way of sorting that problem, but I was just using that as a visual reference for what is actually happening. So I'm going to delete that now. And moving on, we're going to reset our exposure there. Bring our, as you can see, it's created now a solids folder. So that solid we made earlier on has automatically been added to our project settings, which is nice and also quite useless because it's quite easy to make a solid. So I'm not sure why that happens, but not the most useful feature in the world. But what will happen though is if you delete the solid from one composition, then it will, or from here, sorry, and it's in a composition, it will actually delete it from all of them. So if you've duplicated that solid across compositions, so it's a good idea not to mess with this folder. Just leave it as it is and leave it alone. If not, you might have problems. And lastly, we have the delete. So that's how you delete a folder, other than selecting it and deleting it, obviously. Okay, so down to our last section, so bear with me. and it's our timeline and the things above our timeline here. Once again, I'm trying to think which of these you would really want to know about. First of all, toggle switches down here. As you can see, this is switching between here. By default, your timeline will look like this. If you click these little buttons here, you will get a lot more information to play with. You can stretch your clip, shorter or longer. So this is basically, if we play this now, slowing this down in time. I wouldn't recommend doing this. You can also do it by going to time stretch and putting in it'll tell you what your duration is going to be and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to bring this up to 100 again. Duration is how long it is. So I'm going to hide those for now. And when you toggle these, you're effectively switching between these two. You can have them both up at the same time if you like. That is useful. So if you've got a big enough monitor, then recommend having your blending modes, because having a blending mode there is always useful. And you got your track map options as well. And as you can notice now, my little toggle button has disappeared. If I bring that back, then that will be back. So let's just keep this here. And yeah, let's have a look here. We have this is the shy button, and the shy button is useful if you have lots and lots of layers, and you get to the point, maybe you get to the end, and you don't really need to play with the first layers anymore, but you want to leave them there, obviously. You can select them all and click this little button here, and as you can see, it's a bit like a little mole, and the mole has gone underground. And if you click this now and unselect, it looks like all those layers have disappeared, but they're actually still there. And if you press this, they'll all pop back up, as it were. So any layer that is shy will basically hide it. So that's useful maybe if you've got a layer and you're not sure if it'll come in useful. You can hide it from here, but it's still taking up screen space. So then you would just hide it, or shy it, as it were. So that's how to get rid of that. Blending modes, I'll leave that to the advanced Photoshop, because that's more of a, even though it's really important to know what they are, I will cover that in Photoshop, because I just see that as more of a Photoshop element, despite the fact that it's incredibly important. Like I said, I just feel more comfortable going through that in Photoshop. Draft, I would also always keep this at the straight line. You don't really want to bring this down. If not, your images will start looking crappy around the edges because of anti-aliasing. Frame blending. This is useful. Okay, let's bring our time stretch back and bring this down to 50. So once again, just remember that if one of the things down here is ticked, you probably need to OK it with its parent up here. So this guy is saying, I want to blend. You have to ask his dad, and his dad will say, OK, well, that's cool. And so now, so I've doubled the speed of the clip by stretching it down to 50%. And if I turn this off, you'll see that it just plays faster, basically. And no matter what I do here, it will make no difference if this is off. So I'm going to turn that on. Now if I press it with the dotted line, you'll see that we're getting some kind of trailing effect. And if you're wondering why this is still playing when I finish this, you'll have to remember that I have about 800 versions of this layer beneath. So I'm going to delete those for now. I'm going to change this back to black as well. So yeah, that's what's happening there. And if you change this to frame blending, this is where you get pixel motion. This is the slower of the two. Basically, this is now going to look at each frame individually and try and morph the next one into that. So let's have a look how this does. Once again, it's been enabled because this is on. And you see, even though this is coming at double speed, I think this is actually probably better to show you at slightly slower speed. So you can see here we've got slight warping effect going on, and if you've ever watched frag videos on YouTube, people who don't know what they're doing will get this artifact a lot in their videos, because third party, can you see, so we've slowed this video now down to 134%, which is probably about a quarter. I'm not sure. Well, it's 134%. Let's be honest. But as you can see, this is playing slowly, but it looks nice. Now let's play this with no frame blending on, and that looks horrible. It looks steppy because After Effects has basically got no information to add in between in all the new frames, so it's having to duplicate frames at points. And that's looking pretty crappy. Let's have a look at how frame blending does. This is just going to add a slight ghosting effect in between, and that looks okay. But when you're slowing things down, definitely look at the frame blending option. As you can see, that's the smoothest of the three. Motion blur, once again, ask Daddy. Daddy says okay. Motion blur is only going to work if you move the layer around in After Effects. So if your ball is moving around because your render has a ball flying around the screen, turning motion blur on is not going to do anything. The only thing motion blur is going to change is if your, I'm going to keyframe this over 1 second, is if your frame, hold shift to constrain this, by the way, which is why it's moving in a straight line. So as you can see, if I turn motion blur off, it's just going to move. If I turn, I'm going to make this a bit faster actually. So it's just moved, but if I turn motion blur on now, can you see we're getting that trailing effect, and it looks a lot nicer. This is really useful when you have an empty text layer. Oh, I've double clicked that by accident. Hide, hide, hide. When you have text crashing in, so you've drawn your text, and you want it to come in from the side. So actually make a keyframe, move it along, and then for the first keyframe move it left. So this is coming on now, and that looks horrible. Let's just turn the animation off for the layer behind it. So you have your text coming in, and that looks horrible. But if you add motion blur, it just looks that bit nicer when it's moving. So motion blur is really useful and definitely one to look out for. This is the adjustment layer. The effects applied to this layer affect only layers behind it, is the way that After Effects describes it. If you go up here and put adjustment layer, this will basically apply any effect. So we'll add a tint. Any effect to, can you see, so it's applied the tint to not only the text layer, but the infinite ball layer. And adjustment layers are just some of the most useful things out there, basically. It just saves you having to copy the tint effect, copy, and then paste it here, and then paste it here. And that's done the same thing, but if you've got hundreds of layers, this can get quite tiresome quite quickly. So that's what adjustment layers do. And as you can see, when you bring an adjustment layer in, it automatically has that ticked. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend ticking this on or off unless you really want to. I usually just make a new adjustment layer, which is on CS4 and above, Command Alt and Y, in case you're wondering. It doesn't work in After Effects CS3, so they must have added it at CS4. That shortcut, but you can configure it yourself anyway. And the last box is 3D layer, which allows you to, if I hide this, can you see if we have a rotation, we have two parameters. If we tick 3D layer, we have we can now rotate this in 3D, which is very exciting. And once again, one for you to play with. Okay, so this is the graph. This is the brainstorm. If you want to know what these two do, go watch my 5 intermediate tips for After Effects tutorial, and that will explain what these two do. Once again, I'm not going to cover that in this lesson. Last but not least are markers. Shift 1, Shift 2, Shift 3, Shift 4. Delete this marker, delete all markers. These are really useful for, you can do it by pressing the asterisk. The asterisk will add a generic marker, which lets you add text to your marker. But if you want a timeline marker, which appears at the top of the timeline, you can just press Shift 1, Shift 2, Shift 3, or you can drag them in from here. It's really up to you how you do that, but I just want to make you aware of that they are there, and this is great for, like, say, you know, at this point in the time an explosion is going to happen, so you put your marker here and you know that at that point there's an explosion going to happen, and so when you're moving layers around, when you want your text to crash in, you know that you can just line it up, and so at that point it will come in and the explosion will happen. So that's what that does. So yeah, I think that's about it, guys. We're 40 minutes in. It's been quite a long one, but hopefully you feel better equipped to have a look around the layout now. Maybe create your own layouts, adding windows. We've just added the smoother there, and you have these little bars which appear above, which are useful. Yeah, so create your own layouts, and you know what all these buttons do now. You know how to shine and hide your layers. You know how to expand your timeline. You know what all these buttons up here do. Yeah, just really, I think that covers it for the intermediate look at After Effects. I could have gone into specific plugins, but I see that as quite pointless, because at the moment, sorry, it's clearly been a long one. Excuse me, let me have a cheeky drink. The moment on MotionWorks, which is MotionWorks. There's actually series explaining After Effects A to Z, and that's what you want to look out for. And it actually going through and explaining every single plugin in After Effects. So that will be really useful for you if you want to know specifically what a plugin does. So I suggest you keep an eye on that series, and I've actually done a few for that series myself, so keep an eye out for me there as well. And so yeah, that's what we've done today. We've had a look at our layout, and I'm going to cut out now because I'm just jabbering on. Please follow me on Twitter, and you will be the first to know when there's new videos out and such. The subject of today's tutorial was actually decided on Twitter on Friday, so I might start doing that more often. I put it out there, asked people if they wanted a Cinema 4D or Photoshop or After Effects tutorial, and it came back that people wanted to go deeper into After Effects, which is why I've done this video. So, you know, good reason to make an account if you haven't already. Come in, let me know what you want, and hopefully I'll be able to give it to you. So thanks for watching, guys. It's been a long one, but I'll see you soon.